Assalamu alaikum, my name is Taimur Sikandar and today we are going to create our second authentication tutorial video. In this tutorial we are going to use the Google sign-in, Firebase authentication and try to log in our application. So let's quickly see how we can do that. So click on this sign in button, wait for a few seconds because I haven't used the loader. Okay, once this screen appears, click or select an account. Then again we have to wait for a few seconds because I didn't use the loader here. You can check the previous videos if you want to use that loader. And we are showing the username and that email of that specific user, and then we have a logout button. When the user click on this logout button, he will be redirected to previous screen. So again, the second time you don't have to select that account, but it will automatically detect and lock you in. So when I am going to close this one, instead of again signing in, this time it automatically take me to the profile screen. So this is what we are going to create. Okay, so let's get started. Open Android Studio, and we already created this design. If you want to create this design, you can get this code, link is in the description. Okay, so first of all, the first thing we want to do is we want to set up our Firebase. For that, go to the tools and click on this Firebase button. So this is the recommended way to do this. So if you want to do the manual way, you can check my previous videos, you can do that as well. Okay, inside this Firebase assistant, search for the authentication and click on email and password authentication and press on this. You can create your own new Firebase project and click on the connect to Firebase, but I am going to choose the one we are using. So click on that project and click on connect to Firebase. Okay, once the Firebase is connected, now we want to connect add Firebase authentication to your app. So these are basically app level and project level dependencies, so we must have these to start the authentication. So accept changes. Okay, once the dependency is set up correctly, just scroll below at the end and you can see we have a Google sign-in setup. So this is basically documentation, so I want you guys to follow this documentation with me. So click on this Google sign-in and it will take you to the browser. Okay, once it's open, you can see we have some dependencies over here, but the few dependencies automatically added like Firebase Auth. So we'll come back here. So the first thing before getting started coding, the first thing is go to the console from here, and inside the console you can see the project you have just created. So click on this project and move to the authentication. Inside the authentication, go to sign in method, and in here I have enabled this Google, but when you click on this pencil icon, and then you can see we have a toggle button which is saying enable and disable. So make sure it is enabled, and if it is not, then enable it and click on save. One more thing, while enabling this, it will ask you to add your mail, so make sure you have a mail here and save. Once it is enabled, then simply close this one and let's start coding. So the first thing is we will add the dependencies as required, but I don't want you guys to confuse inside the dependencies. Then we added the Firebase to the project, and that's done. Everything works perfectly. Okay, let's start with our coding. So in here you can see we have a Google sign-in options. So let's first copy this and head back to our code, close this one, and first of all we need to assign the ID here and assign ID to this button, Google sign in. Close this one and move to the Java file. And okay, in here the first thing is we want to paste our code, and in most of the tutorials on YouTube you can see they are pasting this code inside the onCreate method, but you guys don't know what this is, what the code is. So I am not going to paste this inside the onCreate method. I am going to write a name of a function which will say create request. That's it. Click on this bulb icon and create this method. Okay, what I want to do is I am going to paste this code inside here, and to remove the errors press Alt Enter and the errors are gone. So what this code is doing, this code is basically creating a request that will be sent. We are not sending this request currently to Google, but we will send this request to Google by asking him to please open the email accounts, open a pop-up and show all the email accounts, because we want to allow the user to log in using your emails. So basically this is a request, but we are not currently requesting to Google. We are just creating the request here. So let's get back to documentation. Okay, this function is created. Okay, as we have pasted this code, that's okay, but you can see we have to integrate Google sign-in. So you have to open this integrated Google sign-in your app, go to this, and you can see we already added this Google sign-in options. You don't need to add this, but we need this single line. So copy this one, copy with the comment, and in here inside this request function, I'm just going to tell you what this is and what this is not. Press Alt Enter to add. Now you can see we have to add this dependency, which was the second dependency on the Firebase page, on the documentation Firebase page. So just click on this add dependency and it will automatically be added. You don't have to add the dependency. Okay, once the dependency is added, click on this Google sign-in and press Alt Enter and import this class. Okay, so again, and click on this bulb icon, create a local variable, no, create a field which will be global and which will have a Google sign-in client. Okay, what we are doing here is inside this sign-in options, we have created some sign-in options, and we will request the Google to show the emails of that specific user, so she can be signed in, and then we are handing this request to Google sign-in client. Basically this sign-in client will work for us by requesting to Google. So we created the request and then we transfer this request to Google sign-in client. So far so good. If you have any questions, you can tell me down below in the comments. Let's close this one. We are done with that. We are back to our authentication document. We have copied this. That's okay. Okay, now what next is we are going to copy this function, which is the sign-in function. Once this function is completed, our request has been completed, but we are currently not requesting. So this function, the sign-in function, is going to request. Now here you can see this is the Google sign-in client, and press Alt Enter to remove this error. Currently you can see we created that request and hand over that request to Google sign-in client, and then inside the sign-in button, so this will be called when user click on that sign-in button. Request will be created right away when the activity created or when the activity launches, and after that inside the sign-in button, this will be called when only the user clicks on that button. So when the user clicks, our request has already been created and we are passing this request to sign-in client, and sign-in client will be calling that intent. The screen you are using, you can see at your right, this screen is basically a complete intent. So we are calling that intent, then we will get some results from that intent, which will be some mail selected by the user. Okay, so we pass this here, and what this RC sign-in is, this is basically a request code attached with that intent. When the pop-up appears, this is a simply integer, so you don't have to worry about it. Copy this one, and outside the onCreate method at the top write private final static, and it is int, the name is equal to, this could be any number, 1 2 3. Sorry about that. Okay, this is simply an integer, will be attached to intent when it is requesting to Google to open that pop-up screen. So very simple. So you can see we are simply starting that intent over here for results, then we will get some results down below. So as I told you, this button will be triggered when the user clicks on the button. So inside the onCreate method, we first want to get that button. Verify. Okay, we will write find view by id r.id.google sign. This was the button. So on its on click listener will be new on click listener. So when user presses this button, what we want to do is we want to call this sign in method. Pretty simple. Okay, we have done with the on create for now, and we allowed the user to open that pop-up. Okay, pretty good. Let's go back to the documentations, and then you can see we have an overridden method. Simply copy this. We can create it by on self, but it is a waste of time, so you can simply copy this one, and after the sign in function simply paste this function and press alt enter, import that class, then import the task and API exception, import it. Then we don't need these logs. Okay, so what is happening here in this function is, once in the sign in, when the user click on this button, an intent will be appeared in a block with have some mails, and when the user selects some mail, it should return some result. So when activity result will be returned, so this function will be triggered by default. It have a request code, it have a result of that code, and then it has a data. So data is basically detail of that username, email, etc. And if request code is equal to rc sign in, so as I told you, this is basically an integer matching with the request code. So once it is equal, then a simple task will be generated and Google will return an account, a complete account of that user. Once, instead of this try, you can write if task.is successful, then do this try function, and in the else you can simply show the error message. So currently we are going to create a toast which will be showing the error message, and error message will be e.getMessage. Okay, once everything works fine and Google has returned some account of that user, the user has selected, and we have account inside here and we are passing this account. So this account can be authenticated with Firebase because we are using the Firebase. So this function will be Firebase auth with Google, means Firebase authentication with Google. So this is the last function. As I told you at the start, we have only 3 functions. So create this method, and it's created. You can simply copy it inside the documents, go below this one, and after on start we have Firebase auth with Google. Copy this. Instead of this, you can paste it. Okay, we don't need these logs, so this one we don't want to update it. Okay, from the start press alt enter, alt enter, alt enter, oh not this one, alt enter, and the Firebase user, then mauth. We are coming back to this. So snack bar. So snack bar is basically a material designed, so we have to add this dependency. If you want to use the snack bar, click on this and it will be added. That's pretty simple, but I am not going to do this. Okay, so this is the basically auth, the Firebase auth, and we have to create this function. You can simply click on this and click on this bulb icon and create a local, but we are going to create this global, create field. So basically what we have done is we have created simple a Firebase auth variable globally, and inside this on create we have to initialize this Firebase auth. So it is mauth is equal to Firebase auth dot get instance. Okay, it's just simply initialized. Close this one, and we have 3 functions. Pretty good. Then the 4th function, we are just saying that Firebase auth with Google, it will be called when the user data has been received from the Google on the success case. Okay, once this is called, it will create a credential, as I already explained about the credentials in my phone authentication tutorial. You can watch that tutorial as well. So this credential will be created on that specific ID of that selected email, and then we have a case. If that authentication succeeded, then we want to say, okay, yes, first Google returned some the user. but is that user authenticated with the Firebase? If yes, then we will simply redirect to our profile screen or to the next screen, or we can perform any action we want, because here is a success and everything ends here. And then in the else, if it fails, then we have to show some message, authentication failed, or you cannot authenticate with the Google, etc., something like that. We are going to do this in a minute, but first we want to do is close this one, and above this onCreate method, the first thing is we want to override a function on start. Right click and go to generate and go to the override methods. You can also press Ctrl O to override the methods and search for onStart. Click on this. After super.onStart, what we want to do is, as we already have created mauth, okay, in here we have to create the Firebase user. User is equal to the auth variable we have created for the Firebase mauth dot get current user. So what we want to do is, on the start of that application, we want to check if that user, if there is already user inside the Firebase user, then we don't want to do that authentication again and again, but we want to simply open the dashboard or open the profile screen, or as it depends upon your requirements. So if there is a user, it will not going to return null, but if it is not null, that means there is some user, so we want to move to that to other screen. If user not is equal to null, in here we want to create intent, and in this intent we are going to move from get application context, means this activity, to the next activity which we haven't created yet. Go to the Java and right click new, create an empty activity and name it profile. That's enough. Finish. So we have a profile activity and we are going to name it inside here profile.class. Then we are going to start that activity and pass intent inside it. Okay, that's it for the onCreate. That's it for the onStart. Okay, now let's get back to the user. When the user is successfully signed in, that means Firebase user is assigned some user. You can see we already write this line at the top. So there is some user, it will automatically remove that null from this and assign some object. Okay, if there is user and it has been initialized, then simply copy this intent, because we want to move on the success case to our profile screen. That's it. And inside the else, what we want to do is, you have two toasts. So when you click on the second one, which you can see at the left as a create new toast, I suggest you to choose this one, because it automatically generate everything. Right, sorry, authentication failed. Okay, so inside the profile screen, when the user arrived, that's good, but inside the design we want to log out that user to retest it again and again. Open the palette, and in here we need to write that button attributes. It will be logout, ID will be logout, and it should have some constraints. Click on this, infer the constraints. So far, let it be very simple button, and then we have a text view which will simply show the name of the user we just received. So it don't have any text. ID will be name, and again ID will be male, and again click on this infer constraints and constraints will be added. Okay, let's go to profile.java, and in here we have two text views, name and male, and then we have a button named, I will remove this error, which is logout. Okay, we are going to call this logout equal to find me by id r dot id dot there is no button, profile id, and it is button. We need to change it to logout. Sorry. Inside the profile we have logout. Press Ctrl D to duplicate them. Change this logout to name. And okay, what we want to do is when the user presses on the logout dot set on click listener, new view dot on listener. Okay, when the user click on this logout button, so we want to log out the user, which will be Firebase auth dot get instance dot logout sign out, and that's it. User will be signed out, and once the user has signed out, copy this intent, create an intent which will be saying go from the get application, which is profile, to let's say go back to the main activity to log in again, and then start that intent. So this is the logout of the documentation. You can get it here at the end of the document, which is Firebase auth dot get instance dot sign out. Okay, we have signed out the user, but we now want to show that data. So for that, write Google sign in account, name it sign in account. As you know, we store that data or get the data from the Google inside account, so is equal to Google sign in dot get last signed in account, and pass this, which is a context. This is a check basically, right? If this sign in account is not null, means there is some user. Then we want to get that user and show the data of that user. Name dot set text, and inside the set text, what we want to do is we're going to, let me hide this. You can see sign account dot get. You can see, you can have bunch of options. You can get the photo URI, URL, get ID, get display name, email, family name, given name, and so on. So the name will be the display name. Press Ctrl D to duplicate and change it to mail, and get email. So that's it. Let's run the application and let's see if it's working or not. Okay, our application is ready. So click on the sign in with Google. We haven't added the loader, so yes, the pop-up appears. You can add a loader as well, which will be loading. That means the screen or that intent. So this is the intent which is loading. So once it's loaded, let me select a mail, and boom, again we don't have loader, so we cannot do that anything for that. So you can see we have a name which is Taimur Sikandar, and the mail which is Mr. Taimur Sikandar @gmail.com. Don't mail me at this mail because I am not going to reply. You can mail me at support@taimursikandar.com, or you can visit taimursikandar.com/contact. Simply click on this go button, and then you can see the user has been signed out. So again, the next time you're going to sign in, that pop-up might not be appeared, but you can directly sign in. Okay, that's it for this tutorial. If you learned something new, please like the video, and if you're new to the channel, please subscribe and hit the bell icon. So that's it for this tutorial. Again, thank you for watching. Take care. Allah Hafiz.